today I want to talk about something I am seeing everywhere right now. It's even something I see in myself a little bit, and I am tempted with maybe more often than I'd like to admit, and that is cynicism. Welcome to Badass Softie, a podcast for leaders who are unapologetically ambitious and want to lead with heart because you're allowed to chase big goals without losing what makes you human. I am your host, Dr. JJ Peterson, and for a lot of us, cynicism didn't start as an attitude. It started as a protection. It's the emotional equivalent of putting on a jacket because the weather keeps changing and you're tired of being cold. It's a way of saying, I do not want to be surprised by disappointment anymore. Because if you don't hope too much, if you don't believe too deeply, if you don't expect too much, then maybe it won't hurt as badly when things fall apart. So if cynicism feels reasonable to you, if it feels earned, if it feels like the only way to stay standing sometimes, I get it. I 100% get it. And I think that's important to name because a lot of conversations about cynicism jump straight to telling people, you know what, just be more positive or optimistic. And I think that misses the point entirely. Most people I know who are cynical did not get there because they stopped caring. They got there because they cared a lot and it cost them. So if cynicism is starting to feel like your natural response, or even if you just find yourself on the side of cynicism more than you would like, I want you to hear this clearly before we go any further. There is nothing wrong with you. Cynicism is not a character flaw. It is a wound response. But I do want to gently ask a little bit of a harder question. At what point does the armor of cynicism that once protected you start to weigh you down? Because just because armor once kept you safe does not mean you are meant to live inside of it forever. Cynicism can protect us from disappointment, but it also slowly distances us from joy, from connection, from the kind of leadership the world desperately needs right now, frankly. Because here's the thing, I've noticed in myself and in a lot of leaders I work with, cynicism works for a while. It really does. And in fact, sometimes, just to be honest, it's a lot of fun because it keeps expectations low. It keeps disappointment manageable. It helps you feel smart instead of naive and in control instead of exposed. I love a good snarky comment. I do. And sometimes I love feeling above it all. I have some great laughs with my friends who are cynical. But over time, it also does something else, something quieter. It puts distance between you and the very things that made leadership and life meaningful in the first place. Connection, creativity, surprise, joy, the ability to be moved by people instead of just managing them. The distance doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly. As you're around more people, you start assuming motives instead of asking questions. You stop being curious. You stop experiencing joy when somebody does something good, and you start thinking, is there an ulterior motive here? You brace yourself for conversations instead of entering into them open-handed. There's this moment that I think about often. When Conan O'Brien was hosting The Tonight Show, and it was his final episode, he looked directly into the camera and spoke to the audience at home. Now, this man had been publicly burned, humiliated, passed over, I believe treated unfairly, and it was played out on a national stage. If anybody had the right to cynicism, it was Conan. And yet, he looked at the camera, and his message was not bitter. It was not sharp. It was not sarcastic. He said, in essence, all I ask is one thing, and I'm asking this particularly to young people who watch. Please don't be cynical. I hate cynicism. For the record, it's my least favorite quality, and it doesn't lead anywhere. Nobody in life gets exactly what they thought they were going to get. But if you work really hard, you're kind, amazing things will happen. I'm telling you, amazing things will happen. It blew me away when he said those words. Because I agree, cynicism feels like it's going to lead somewhere. It feels almost like it's going to lead to safety, to emotional control, where we get to protect ourselves from anything else bad happening. But Conan was right. It doesn't lead anywhere good. It does not build. It does not heal. It does not inspire. It calcifies. And here's the thing we don't talk about enough. I have come to see that even in my own life, cynicism costs. It costs you. And research even backs this up. Cynical leaders are consistently perceived as less trustworthy. Do you hear that? When you show up with cynicism, you are considered less trustworthy, even when you are highly competent. Teams led by cynical leaders show lower psychological safety and less creativity. People bring less of themselves when they sense a leader has already made up their mind about how things are going to go. And neuroscience research even shows that sustained cynicism keeps the brain in a constant threat posture. When your nervous system stays armored, it limits curiosity, it limits imagination, and it limits long-term thinking. In simple terms, cynicism might keep you protected, but it's actually hope that keeps you alive. Cynicism costs. It costs you wonder. It costs you the ability to be genuinely moved by someone else's courage or kindness. It costs you small amounts of delight that used to sneak up on you. It costs you the freedom to hope without immediately tempering it. Cynicism makes leadership heavier than it has to be, because relationships become transactional. And slowly, quietly, your world gets smaller. You may still be successful. You may even, in many circles, still be respected, but something essential starts to dim. And I want to say this clearly as I'm kind of speaking against cynicism here. I do not think the answer to cynicism is just blind optimism. I do not think it is all about pretending that things are fine when they are not. Instead, I think the antidote to cynicism really is joy and wonder and relationship. And those things, in those moments when you are so tempted to fall into cynicism, is discipline. The discipline to stay open, the discipline of not letting disappointment have the final word, the discipline of tenderness. These things are not weakness. Tenderness is not weakness. Openness is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not ignoring reality. Tenderness and openness is maintenance. It is the work of keeping your heart responsive instead of reactive, alive instead of armored. And yes, it takes effort. I don't say any of this lightly. It's work. It takes effort to stay curious when you would rather just dismiss. It takes effort to stay generous when you've been burned. It takes effort to stay human when detachment would earn you applause. This is where I always think of one of my favorite characters, Samwise Gamgee from The Lord of the Rings. And there's a moment in The Lord of the Rings when everything feels lost. The road is brutal. The burden is unbearable. And Frodo, who's carrying the ring to Mordor, he's done. He's done. He's exhausted. And he wants to give up. He wants to quit because things are so hard that it just seems like there's no other way than just say, we're out, we're done. But Sam stops, and in that moment, he doesn't offer a strategy. He doesn't minimize the danger. He does not promise a happy ending. But he says, was probably one of my favorite lines in literature and movies. He says, "It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad has happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out all the clearer. These were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going, because they were holding on to something, that there is some good in the world, and it's worth fighting for. Sam doesn't pretend the road is easy. He does not minimize the pain. He does not say it will all work out. He just refuses to let cynicism win. And sometimes that is leadership. Choosing to stay open when closing off would be easier. Choosing to keep caring when it would be safer not to. Choosing to hope, not because it is guaranteed, but because it is generative. Clear-eyed hope is not naive. It's ambitious. It takes discipline to stay curious, to stay generous, because hope builds teams. Hope fuels creativity. Hope invites people to bring their full selves instead of just their defenses. So if you're tired, if you're discouraged, if cynicism has started to feel like the best way to cope, let me say this like a favorite uncle who loves you too much to let you disappear inside of your armor. You're allowed to rest without hardening. You're allowed to protect yourself without closing off. You're allowed to be wise without becoming brittle. But please, don't give up on the possibility of goodness. Do not give up on people too quickly. Cynicism is not the answer. It's not wrong or weak or shameful. It's just not the answer. And so before we close, I want to make this really practical, not theoretical, not poetic, practical. If cynicism is something you are actively wrestling with, here are a few simple practices you can try, not to fix yourself, but just to stay open. The first thing is notice your tone. Just notice your tone. Cynicism often shows up in tone long before it shows up in beliefs or behaviors. If your tone is sharp or defensive or dismissive, that is usually the armor starting to take shape. Pay attention to how you respond to new ideas. Pay attention to how you talk about people, especially when they're not in the room. Your tone may be the first sign something is hardening. This is a signal, not a failure. Pay attention to your tone. Second, name disappointments early. Cynicism often forms when disappointment gets unnamed, when you skip straight from hope to sarcasm without ever acknowledging the grief in between. Try saying out loud, even just to yourself, "That hurt more than I expected." Naming disappointment keeps it from hardening into something colder. Third, and this is one of my favorites, protect your sources of wonder. This matters more than we think. One book, one piece of art, one conversation, one place, one person that reminds you there is still good in the world. Cynicism shrinks when wonder has a place to land. And finally, borrow hope when yours feels thin. This is not weakness. This is leaning into strength, even if it belonged to somebody else. Let someone else believe for a minute when you cannot. Let someone else remind you why the work matters. Let someone else say, keep going when you're tired of saying it to yourself. You do not have to stay open everywhere, but do not close everything. This is the work. And so I want to leave you with this. May you lay down the armor that once protected you if it now weighs you down. May your hope be disciplined and not naive. May your tenderness be fierce. And when the road feels long and heavy, may you hear a steady voice beside you saying, there is some good in this world, and it's worth fighting for. Because we believe you can be both ambitious and kind, fun and driven, powerful and deeply human. Your leadership can inspire, your success can have soul, and your ambition can make space for everyone. That's why you're a badass softie. We'll see you next week. Thanks Thanks for listening. Follow and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. BadassSoftie.com is crafted by Fruitful Design and Strategy.